to Milwaukee or all the way to Manitowoc? Or?
All the way, no, right into camp. Not Sheridan. I didn't return to Sheridan. Camp in Wisconsin. We've got one still active today.
Ripley? No.
No, it's in the southwest part of the state. Funny, some of these things don't want to come back.
Okay, so anyhow, you went by train, actually, right? The train took you right to the Army
From camp to camp.
post, okay. And then you processed out of the Army there, or had you already, no, you processed out of the Army in Wisconsin?
I processed out of the Army, and I'll tell you the name of the camp because I carry my discharge.
You carry your discharge all these years?
Sure.
Oh, wow.
Camp McCoy, Separation Center.
Camp McCoy.
Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. That's the one I was groping for. Okay. This is a miniature of my discharge.
Oh, may I look at that a minute?
Sure.
Oh, that's kind of fascinating. Army of the United States Honorable Discharge. This is to certify that Paul J. Arndt, private first class. Oh, when did you get promoted? You said in Nuremberg, right? Was there some event that occurred that
No, I was made.
caused you to be promoted?
No, the 8th Division made me a private first class at the end of the
Oh,
war.
I'm sorry. Oh,
At the end of the war.
oh, okay, okay.
They also-
Excuse me. It wasn't in Nuremberg. Then you went to.
It was after the war terminated. They made me a private first class, and they issued me the combat infantryman's badge for serving in combat with the division.
Okay.
And that was one of the last acts that was performed on my record.
Okay. So you were a PFC when you left the 80th Infantry Division.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Big rank. I never bragged about it, and I still don't have it
Well-
on my. You notice my sleeve is empty. It's clean.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I didn't know. No, I didn't actually notice that. Okay.
Yeah.
So at any point, and we talked about this a little bit before, but like in Nuremberg, did you develop much of a relationship with any civilians? You mentioned the
Yes.
laundry guy and so forth. Tell us just a little bit about relations with civilians, maybe there in Nuremberg or anywhere else after the war.
I did. I told you I had the best
Yeah.
the best laundry boy that
Yeah, yes.
ever existed. His name was George, and his last name was Vollenhals. I
Yes.
think it was Vollenhals, pretty close to that, Vollenhals.
Is he a young guy or middle-aged or old man?
He was about 12 years old.
Oh, he's a kid then.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was the runner. He was about 12 years old, 12 or 13, right in that area.
Uh-huh.
His father was a German soldier who was now discharged and out of the Army. And the Coca-Cola company had set up a plant in Nuremberg and were bottling Coke for the GIs
Yes.
and distributing it. His father worked in the Coca-Cola plant as a manual laborer, and
He'd left the Army, obviously.
yeah, he was a
German
civilian.
Army.
He was just
Now a civilian. Okay.
Yeah, he was screened apparently by whomever screened him.
Whoever did such things.
Yeah, there was a screening. They were
Oh,
looking.
yeah,
They
for
were looking for
Nazis.
responsible people.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And those that had no responsibility were discharged just like the war was over for them.
Right.
Right. His father was discharged. He was a civilian. He had a job working for the Coca-Cola company, and he was earning, a meager living. They were living in a one room, and I mean, we would consider it a closet. It probably occupied the size of the square feet of that bar area there. That was.
What would you describe that as? 10 by.
It's a
know,
12 feet by 14 feet, something like
Okay.
that.
All right.
Enough to have a one single bed. They had a single bed in there, and a little bit of a buffet with some dishes in it,
Yes.
and a small sink. And that was it. That was their home. And in there lived the mother and the father and this child,
Yes.
a 13-year-old boy. And his mother did laundry for GIs, and the 13-year-old was the pickup and delivery service.
Oh, I see.
He got the customers and brought the laundry to Mama. Mama did the laundry and serviced it, ironed it, pressed clothes. She washed our woolen clothes, our woolen trousers, army trousers. She washed those by hand with water. And believably or not, it was very effective. She did a beautiful job. No dry cleaning facilities.
Uh-huh.
And they had a regular little small business going. The cost of a week's laundry was 2 or 3 candy bars. Would take care of your whole laundry.
That was currency, was it?
That was
Candy bars?
Was currency.
Was there a cigarette economy also going
Yeah,
on?
there was also a cigarette economy, but the candy was more.
Was better, huh?
I think it was easier to get money out of it for them. It was easy for them to put that on the black market.
And actually get some
Yep.
genuine coins.
They could probably convert that into German marks real easy and make a good killing because they hadn't had candy in the country for quite some time.
Ah, okay.
So there was a
Okay.
real market for it.
Did you maintain any contact with these folks after you left there?
Yes, I did, and I have letters to this day at home from George.
Uh-huh.
I have been intending for the last year to revive our friendship and pick up on it and see if I can locate him. Because
How long ago was the last contact between you and him?
And him, probably, let's see, I was home in 46, probably in the 50s, 51, 52, about the time I got married, yeah, it was 51.
Long
About that
time.
Yeah.
Long time. Never know, you might find him.
It's very possible.
Have you ever gone back?
No,
Since then, you never gone back to Germany at all? Have you ever gone back to Europe at all?
never.
No? Okay. Do you have any desire to? Is it
Just recently, I've had some
Gee, we gotta
desire.
go back to Nuremberg
Yeah.
and go back to...
Just recently, my wife has been corresponding all these years, at least once a year, with a cousin of hers over there.
Uh-huh.
And he was in the German army, and ironically, he was taken as a prisoner over there very early in the war, and he was sent over to here. He was one of the prisoners that was billeted in the United States and used in army camps for doing
For
laundry.
labor, huh?
Yeah, for labor. They had him at every army
How long
camp.
was he here?
He was here for 2 years.
So he was in
Colorado.
the States about the time you were in...
He was in Colorado in prison when I was going over there to fight. Hmm.
Certain irony
Yeah.
in that. The German is here and the American is in Germany, huh?
Right. But the man, while he was in prison
Yes.
here, learned to speak and write English fluently.
Uh-huh.
We got a letter from him as late as 3 weeks ago, a return letter that we had sent him. My wife sent him an article on German prisoners during World War II in the States, and it was...
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was in a magazine, and
Uh-huh.
she took the whole magazine and she shipped it over there to him.
Uh-huh.
And we still correspond every Christmas. This past Christmas, I broke down the barrier. We had never discussed war. We had never discussed soldiering. In our Christmas cards, it's always a Christmas greeting per se, and no...
Yeah.
This
Now, this
past-
is your wife's cousin.
Wife's cousin.
And of course, they were cousins before the war.
That's right.
So, I mean, this is a pre-war and a post-war connection.
And a pre and a post.
And that's because, as you said, Manitowoc there was a lot of German people of German
Yeah.
ancestry in Manitowoc.
That's correct.
Okay.
So this past Christmas, I put in a nice little letter, and I talked about the war. And I said to him that, we both had our reasons for what we served for. We both had our countries at heart,
Right?
and we were defending them, so to speak. And I said, I wish that I could get together with him and sit down and talk, because I think we could talk for days on end about our experiences and enjoy one another's past.
Huh.
And that must have broken a little, touched a button in his heart too. He returned back and he said he'd love to meet me and have that discussion.
Yeah,
He
maybe
said-
you ought to get together.
He said, well, that's why I'm saying, you asked me, do you ever have
Yeah.
a desire to go back? And I say no.
But
Recently,
maybe,
recently I've had a little different feeling about about going back. I think I'd like to see him, although he's getting pretty old, like I am, you know, and I don't really have an ambition to travel, and especially back over there, but
Should we answer this?
probably not. There's somebody willing to come in and have a drink.
Well, that's interesting. Maybe you ought to work a deal, you know, you go over there, visit for a couple of weeks in Germany, and invite him back here to the
Yeah.
States for a couple. He might be interested in going out to Colorado and seeing some of the
No.
places.
He's not interested in travel either. He's had a wife
Oh.
who's had a lot of bone restructuring, hip surgery, and that sort of thing.
Oh,
Very
so,
poorly on her
so he
feet.
doesn't want to
No,
travel,
he never put her through
huh?
that.
Okay. Well, let's, did anything else come to mind about Nuremberg, for example? Did you have any particular feelings about what was going on around you as far as the trial, or did you think we're doing exactly the right thing, or maybe we're not doing exactly the right thing, or didn't you think about that too much, or was justice being served? I mean, what were your emotions as they related to the Nuremberg tribunal? Or did you have any strong thoughts, one way or another?
No, I had really, I knew I had no control over what was being done there. I thought what was being done was correct.
Yes, okay.
I admired the people that were in charge. I remember vividly admiring Chief Justice Jackson.
Right.
He was the real man structured to do the real nut and bolt
Right.
work of that
Okay.
our part of the tribunal. I guarded his office many a night during the wee hours of the morning.
You say you literally guarded his office.
His
You like
office.
stood outside his office.
We had a post in front of his door. It was a post. His door was constantly under surveillance.
Where was he? Rita, did some of the high, the judges and maybe some of the prosecutors or whatever, did some of those people live inside that security realm?
No.
Live in there? No.
No.
Presumably, well, like Jackson presumably lived in some very secure place, though, right?
There was a hotel about, I would say, 10 or 15 minutes away from the Palace of Justice. There was a motor pool across the street of German civilian automobiles, which were quite antiquated at the time. They were old automobiles because Germany hadn't made any new automobiles. They were all making tanks
Right.
for so many years. So their automobiles were quite antiquated, and they looked real cute, really. They had a classic look to them.
Yes.
And they had German drivers with black suits and little hats, just like you see in the movies. And they shuttled the personnel from what they called the Grand Hotel.
Right.
And I don't know if it ever had another name, but they called it the Grand Hotel. And that housed all of our dignitaries, and it housed all of our press people of any substance, and the people that were really running the court system all lived down there. All of the American civilians, all the French civilians, all the British civilians. Now, how the British and the French got around, I don't know, but that motor pool was available to whomever, and they could call that motor pool, and they would dispatch a taxi, and they would be taken from the palace to the hotel and back and forth.
Were they guarded in any way?
Not in transit. The only ones that were guarded was Jackson and Biddle, who were in charge of our delegation. And they were, yes, they had heavy.
They were guarded.
They were guarded.
Pretty much everybody else was kind of on their own.
They were on own. They wanted
to and from work.
Security. They got
being,
back and forth. But our dignitary Biddle and Jackson, they were picked up with a half track with a 50 caliber machine gun on the top, and their taxi was escorted. They traveled by the same taxi mode. They had military taxi though. They had our command cars,
Okay.
an OD car with a star on it, army automobile,
Okay.
and they shuttled them back and forth with armed escort, and then they escorted them right up to the palace, and they got out and went right through our security then, and they were in the Palace of Justice security.
Okay. Did you have any relation with any other civilians that come to mind, other than George, or the young man who's in the laundry business? And you mentioned your wife's cousin, of course, who you had this
Yeah, we had
dialogue, letter
today.
dialogue.
Mhm.
Did
I didn't
anybody
know
else?
them then.
Anybody else? Okay, but anybody else come to mind from your days in Nuremberg?
No, he was the one that I developed I would say my closest relation to the German people.
Okay. Okay.
And his mother was a wonderful person.
Uh-huh.
George spoke quite a bit of English. He had learned English in school, and he got along real well with soldiers. He dealt real well with them. He'd come over in the evening, and we'd play ping pong. We had a ping pong area. We had a recreation building, and I remember 2 ping pong tables in there,
Uh-huh.
a kind of a little day room. We threw some old magazines in there that we could get up. And I'd take George over there at night, and we'd play ping pong together, and we'd have some real battles. He was a great ping pong player.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah. So we developed a relationship with him that was probably more closely than the normal laundry boy. It was
Uh-huh.
almost a one of that I felt he was more like a brother of mine.
Comrade.
Yeah.
Serious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
What kind of general impression? What kinds of thoughts spun around in your mind with regard to the German people at that time? Not today, but then. That's a hard question, I know, but I mean, did you think of these people as, well, you tell me. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, I had a compassion for them. I think they knew what had happened to them and how they got taken down the path of where they ended up. And they had nobody to blame but themselves for creating it. And they never realized, I don't think, the real hardship that it was going to be, the burden that was going to be placed on them. They thought it was going to be a lot simpler and a lot easier than it was. They had a lot of faith in their president, so to speak, like we have faith in our
Right.
president, that he's giving us the best direction he can and he's doing the best for his country.
Okay.
They felt equally about Hitler that he was doing that same thing, and he did. But his economy was based on building armor and building tanks and waging war and preparing for war, and he had other motives than we have or the English have or
Okay.
whatever.
But you didn't have any real strong animosity for the German people per se. Would that be fair
That's
to
very,
say?
very
that
fair.
they were kind of led down the primrose path, or led down the wrong path
Yep.
by their leaders,
And they admitted it.
notably Hitler, of course. But I mean, is
That's
that
a
fair characterization?
fair characterization. And
I mean, it's not like you didn't really deep down inside you dislike Germans as human beings.
No.
Okay.
No, they had nothing to do with it any more than I had to do with being in war and
Okay. The
in
culprits
battle.
were there. Many of them were right there in Nuremberg,
That's right.
inside your ring of security.
That's right. And
Okay.
we were protecting them.
Okay. You mentioned the fact your mother wrote all the time, like every day. Did you write back frequently?
I wrote back as often as I could, which turned out to be like, when in the closing moments of the war, it was maybe once a week.
Okay. Did you have pretty ready access to pen and, this may be a stupid question, but pen and paper to do that?
You grabbed it wherever you found it. I mean, when you billeted up in a house at night, you'd rummage through drawers, you'd come up with an envelope and some paper.
Okay. There was no system for getting paper and pencil and envelopes out
No.
to the GIs.
You could.
They were proud to get you food, huh?
That's right. But
Okay.
you could write a letter at night if you could stay awake and you had,
Okay.
and you
Okay.
found a piece of paper, you wrote it,
Mhm.
put free on the top corner and gave it to your lieutenant. And your lieutenant censored it. He put the seal on it. The
Censor seal?
Censor seal.
And then away it went, huh?
And then he would relay it to your company headquarters
Postal
and
unit.
it would go out.
Did you take pictures? Photographs?
I never had a camera. I had access to a camera in Nuremberg, and I've got pictures in Nuremberg because I borrowed a camera and film, and then I had them processed.
Okay. Did you ever ask yourself, what in the world am I doing here? This is nuts. Why am I here? Why am I doing? My uncle was in the Army, and he said at one time he was bouncing around, and he was tired and miserable in the back of a, I don't know, a truck, some kind of deuce and a half truck or some
I
kind of
know how
truck.
you feel.
Boom, 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 very
Raining,
uncomfortable,
drizzling.
cold, and he's probably dirty and filthy, and it just came into his mind for no reason at all. What in the heck am I doing here? What is this all about? Did you ever have thoughts like that? What is going on here?
Yes, it's a very hollow feeling. I can recall it. I guess I can't feel the emotions today, but it's one of somewhat of loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
Being continually shuffled in a military environment from day to day, and not knowing whether you're going to give up your little 3 friends that you just made yesterday, whether you'd have them next month or not.
Right.
Will I be shifted to another camp, to another section, to another unit, to another this? Always uncertainty of living.
Yeah, that's a key. Excuse me for interrupting, but uncertainty, that seems to be a kind of a key element here. You didn't know, you went in the Army, you didn't know what you're going to be. Well, you found out you're going to be a medic. Well, then pretty soon you're not a medic, and you're going from one geographic location to another geographic location, except you don't know where the new location is. And not only do you not know where you're going, you don't know why you're going there. I mean, it's just uncertainty stacked on uncertainty, stacked on, and even when the war's over or semi-over in Europe, you're thinking, geez, maybe there's going to be another war for me over in the Pacific. Constant uncertainty. Do you think, given that the military authorities did as much for you as they should have done to relieve that uncertainty? I mean, to what extent was it necessary or just inevitable that when you left, for example, Fort Lewis, somebody must have known you were going to Texas. Now, do you think there was a good reason for not letting you know? I mean, like for security reasons, operational intelligence reasons? Or do you think that maybe the people who put you on the train, literally, that actually, said, hey, go get on that train, didn't really know where you were going? Somebody knew, but maybe they didn't know. I mean, do you think it was in other words, do you think that you were given as much information as was available, or just nobody gave a darn? Nobody really cared enough about you to give you that information?
No, I never had that feeling. No.
You felt that you were getting the information you were entitled, or you should have known, or?
I felt that there probably was no need for the moment for me to know. Had I known, I don't know what damage I could have done with it, but it's probably possible that somebody could have done damage with it.
Okay.
I mean, not necessarily me, but supposing I said it to somebody out on the street out there, it maybe...
The slip of the lick sinks the ship and all that kind of thing.
I accepted that theory.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And you weren't bitter or angry or particularly, I mean, you didn't obviously you don't like the uncertainty, but you sort of accepted it as a reasonable state that you had to be kept in, the state of uncertainty?
It probably has to be done this way.
You thought it was reasonable, then,
right,
basically.
and we never challenged it. No.
Okay, and it didn't anger you?
No,
it didn't anger you? God, I want to know where I'm going.
No, you didn't have to like it, but you certainly didn't make a stand and rebel, as we now know it, that if you don't like something, you walk out on the street.
Yeah, okay, it was a different era then.
You don't have a chance to pick it out on the street with a sign when you're in the Army. There is no such way to challenge the general of the camp. You don't walk in front of his office with a sign on your back saying, General, I don't like where I'm going.
Okay. Did you, you are an electrical engineer. I presume you did that when you got back. You finished high school? Or did you go directly to college without benefit of high school?
No, in my era in high school, my class, which was the class of 44 in high school, was the last class that was mistreated the way I was mistreated.
Yes?
The class after me was given the opportunity to stay in high school as long as they needed to in order to finish. Then their military service was activated at the day of graduation. Then they were sent to their medical
Were they
examination.
actually drafted in 45?
They were
Oh,
still,
yeah.
yes, they were.
Oh, sure, because they
Mhm.
didn't know the war was over.
Yeah,
I mean, at
But-
least in the Pacific Theater, they didn't know the war was over.
right. They were drafted, but I was told by some of them, we just had a reunion here just this last month, and it was my wife's 50th graduation party, which was at Mile Point, and we went to it. And I talked to a few of the GIs that were in that part of it. That was the year behind me, and they told me that they were left to finish high school, even though they turned 18 during the senior year. They were left to finish. Then they were drafted, and they said there was utter confusion when they were drafted because the Army was then no longer in need. This sudden demand had changed, and they didn't know where to put them. They would go into Fort Sheridan and be stationed there, and they'd be laying there for a month, 2 months, didn't know what to do with them, just doing nothing. And they had a frustration in their induction. But here they are, they're sitting on their hands, so to speak, and had no direction, didn't know what was going to
Well,
happen.
did they actually muster a lot of them out of the military? I mean, you
They-
spent 2-3 months in the military and didn't send them home, or how?
I would expect they had shortened terms that they served.
Okay, all right. Did you have, and did you finish high school when you came back, or did you just go directly to college? You went to the GI Bill or something?
I didn't have to finish high school. I was given a diploma
Okay.
in lieu of my military service. I was credited.
Okay, and then
And
you went,
I was graduated. My mother collected my diploma at graduation day. They gave it to her instead of me.
oh, I see, in 1944.
Right.
Okay, so technically, you graduated from high school in 1944.
Right.
And did you plan to go back to college after the war? Is that what you did? In other words, when you left the Army, you said, okay, now I'm going to go out in the world and I'm going to do such and so. Did your life more or less play out that way? Did you plan to go to college, become an engineer, etc.?
I really didn't have a plan, and I put my life together as best I could when I got back from the Army. I was confused. I had a transition period there that was difficult. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't know where my slot was. I had depended on the Army to just feed me, and
Right.
the mind had
Hello.
to be restructured and be changed. And I went in. I got established with a company, a large utensil company in our city. I served an apprenticeship with them as a tool and die maker,
Uh-huh.
a 4-year apprenticeship. I became a tool and die maker in the machine shop.
Uh-huh.
I learned a skilled trade, and I was challenged by top management, by a vice president,
Uh-huh.
to come up into and work in engineering, product development, if you
Yes,
will.
sir.
Because of the die and the mechanical experience, they wanted to insert that into their top engineering group of
Uh-huh.
product engineering. And they wanted the expertise of dies to come up there and help them to design products that could go back and be made better and simpler in manufacturing.
Uh-huh.
And I provided that input. I went up there, I accepted his challenge, and I went up in there, and they gave me a wealth of information that I gained in this exchange of ideas. I learned from them, they learned from me,
Uh-huh.
and as a result, I was actually educated within this company.
Okay.
I got my education. I got all my engineering education there from experience and exposure to engineering
Uh-huh.
groups. I went on to be a full-fledged product engineer in the electrical product line.
Uh-huh.
And I told you where I ended up with
Yes, sir.
Underwriters
With Underwriters
Laboratories in
Lab
the
and
end.
all. Yes, sir.
I was invited to the top echelon of Underwriters Laboratories as expert engineer input. And I have no degree. I have no college education.
Uh-huh.
I have totally gotten my education from experience in a trade and exposure to management, and what you might call a college of experience.
Uh-huh. Your entire career was there in Manitowoc?
Manitowoc.
Manitowoc?
Right.
Your whole career was,
My
okay.
whole career, but not with the same company. I moved on. I went
Okay.
to another company.
Is Manitowoc right on, yeah, you said it's right on the
Right on the
lake.
lake.
Right, yeah, okay. Did you have any particular feelings about people of your generation who didn't go to the war, be they weren't drafted, or they had deferments, or were there people back then that, there must have been a few at least, who feigned illness or something, pretended to be sick when they were, I mean, that was classic during my generation's war, the Vietnam War. People trying to pretend they were sick to avoid service.
There was no such thing in our era.
There was no such thing as that, huh?
No, there was.
I'm sure there were some people tried to avoid service some way or one way or another. How would they get deferments, get in a job that would get you a deferment, or?
There were valid reasons for some of them to be home working, because we built submarines in our hometown,
Right.
and there was an awful lot of expertise needed.
They built submarines.
We built, what was it, 27 or 28 submarines in Manitowoc, Wisconsin.
How did they get them to the ocean?
They took them down Lake Michigan to Chicago, through the Welland Canal, over to the Mississippi, and down to New Orleans, all on a barge.
Down, it went New Orleans.
They floated them down. They floated them right through.
I'll be darned.
They got them down to New Orleans, and they put the conning tower on and the periscope, and they were operational.
Huh. So
They had
did
their
you
crew.
didn't have any strong feelings then, one way or another, about folks that avoided service one way or another?
I don't think any of us did. No.
Okay.
Would you like to sit in?
Sure.
Come on.
Sure. Sum up here. Let me just, Mr. Arndt, just ask you a very, very general question. You can just kind of free associate or whatever. What impact did the war have on you, other than the obvious things? You missed the last year of high school and so forth. I mean, in more general terms, how did it change you as a person? How do you think it changed our society, our country's view of the world? What kind of lessons did our society learn or not learn? What could have been done differently? What should have been done differently?
That's one question.
Yeah, that's one question. Yeah, no, I know that's. I prefaced that by
Yeah.
saying it was going to be an overbroad
Yeah,
question,
it's a
which
broad-
obviously was.
It's a broad question. You're right. But in answer, I would say that it probably caused me to mature at a very rapid rate mentally. It certainly caused me to mature physically, because I got some real physical experiences in training that I had never dreamed of, like hand-to-hand combat and some of the warfare that we were taught. My mind was conditioned to fighting and to war, and I guess part of the transition period back to civilian life was equally difficult to remove that and then reprogram, if you will, a computer, a mind, which is
Right.
It wasn't easy going either way. Going in and being programmed into the military was difficult. Emotionally, it was extremely difficult. There were times when you were lonesome. There were times when you missed your people. There were times when you were shipped into a barracks, you knew no one, absolutely no one, into a group of men, and you had to sift out the good from the bad. And like you mentioned about some of the people that were trying to stay out of the service, you'd run into a batch of them that were drafted in and really didn't want to be in, and they worked real hard to get out. They found a lot of devious ways to get out.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, there were a lot of them. I
Huh.
saw several of them. They would pose to be mentally deranged, and they knew how to act it out.
Uh-huh.
But the son of a guns were sane. They were smart.
Klinger types, huh?
Yes.
Corporal Klinger, huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yep. And they knew how to fake this and fake that.
And did some of them succeed?
Sure they did.
Oh.
Hmm. Sure. There were objectors who really didn't want to fight, but they wanted to get out. They just wanted out, and they got out. A lot of them did. There were some nationalities that I don't want to be critical of them, but they had goals that and they had some way they had connections. They'd end up in an office position, in a clerical position, because of their name, if you will. some of that prejudice was existent then. We saw it. The guys that really didn't know how to pull the strings and maneuver their way out and sneak out of stuff and slippery out were those of us that didn't. We fought. And I guess I was one of the vulnerable ones, one of the what would you call it, meek. You know, he went on. I came in with a good experience in a rifle, and I perpetuated that. My father started it in me, and I didn't know anything else but to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
When I was trained in Texas, I wanted to be the best shot in the company. Well, it turned out I was only the best shot in one platoon. There were 4 of us in the company.
Mm-hmm.
But my ambition was that if I'm going over there and I got to fight for my life, I want to be the best damn shot around, because I'm going to get the other guy before he's going to get me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm a better shot than he is,
yep.
that's what's going to happen.
There's
That
certain
was my
logic to
goal.
that, that's
certain
true.
logic.
That's common
Okay.
sense.
Yes, yes. Just, excuse me, just for the record here, the new voice that has entered the tape is Mrs. Arndt, who has just joined us here about 3-4 minutes ago. So, excuse me.
Did you tell him about the man that was drafted with you, that he had only one eye and they took him?
No, we didn't get into that.
No.
Okay. I always thought that was real strange, that they would take someone with one eye.
Well, the physicals that we passed when we went into the service were anything but stringent. The old comment about it, they looked in this year, and if they couldn't see daylight, you were all set. I mean, you were in. I mean, that's about as loose as it was. Yes, I did serve in Washington, in Fort Lewis, Washington, with a man who could see only out of one eye. And he was in service just like I was, and he was doing the same thing I was. He was training medical personnel. I never could figure out how he got in there, and he couldn't either. But he was there, and that was it. But
Maybe he said he couldn't see out of the eye, and nobody
maybe he lied.
and
Maybe,
believed him, you know.
Yeah, maybe
Maybe he did.
he lied.
Maybe they'd seen that dodge before, so they said, "No, heck with you," and sent him on, and he really couldn't. He genuinely couldn't
Yeah,
see.
we need men
You
today.
talk about, were there people that stayed out of the service, and there must have been, I didn't realize it either at the time, but we live in a new part of town, and the people in that area are our age. And when we started going to the convention, I would say, do you go to your Army convention? Well, no, I was never in the service. Well, you don't ask them why. And we have 3 in our neighborhood that way. And they're all similar in age to us. So somehow they avoided getting in the service. Don't ask me how.
Some were valid. Some were in the shipyards building submarines, you know,
Yeah.
and then,
Right.
and we never contested that.
That was important too.
Yeah.
There probably were a lot of little infractions that you could really be critical of, but I guess the main thing is that we had a war that had to be waged, and we had a dedicated country, and we had a dedicated cause, and we were led by a great president who had the determination to rid the world of what was going on in it, and set out to do it, and we backed our country completely.
Okay. You never had any questions that this was a noble enterprise then?
No.
There was never, I mean, that was no second thoughts.
It had to be
No.
done.
Okay.
It's got to be done, and somebody's got to take charge and be the director.
Okay.
We can't all be generals. We've got to have a lot of good workers behind it. And it didn't bother me to go in and be what I was and end up, with no rank. I felt I did a job, and I did the best job I could, and I went into every situation with best prepared person that I could be. And I think we had a country of people like that, and that's why we came out on top.
At 18, you didn't question those things in those days any more than you would question your doctor as being all that he could be. Now when you go to a doctor, you go and you sort of look at his credentials, but you didn't do that in those days either. You respected your doctor, your pastor, etc., and so forth. These are people you had respect for. I guess there was more respect.
Yes.
Now that we're older, we do a little more questioning.
I suppose.
Yeah, but we were very naive 18-year-olds. compared to the kids.
It was an
now.
age, an era.
Yeah.
Everybody was that way.
I have a 9-year-old grandson now who knows what his homosexual is. I did not know at 18 in those days.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't common. But now my grandson, we're playing the game of life, and you get a man or a woman passenger in your car. He says, "Are you straight or are you homosexual? It depends on you. Get pink or blue." You know. But
It's a different world.
is this good or
Yes,
isn't it?
yes.
Only time will tell.
Okay. Well, it's now 4:20 in the afternoon, and I've taken up a whole lot of your time, and I appreciate very much
Good.
your energy and your willingness to talk for our...
My only regret is, like I said, if I only had my memorabilia here from the war crimes trials, I think you would have appreciated and loved to look at them off the tape recorder. Naturally, we can't do that. But I think on the side here, I could have showed you some things that
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
would have been
That would be
very interesting. So if you are going to come through our state, like you said, you possibly might head into Wisconsin. By all means, you have an open invitation.
More than welcome.
Come, use my address, my phone number.
Oh, well, thank you. I might very well do that. So, and we'll end the interview here, and we'll talk a bit more about that, if you don't, just for a second. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.